Well, good morning, everyone. I want to say it's really good to be back with you. I missed being with you last weekend. My daughter was on spring break, and so we did a little traveling, trying to figure out what the next steps in her life are going to look like. So if you could be praying for us, I'd really appreciate that. The last thing we want is her moving back into our home with us, okay? So help a brother out, pray, okay? I do want to thank Jeremy for doing just a wonderful job last weekend as he addressed an issue that I think almost all of us struggle with. The issue of control. Now, I don't know about you, but I try to control all kinds of things in my own life. I try to control outcomes. I try to control my kids. I've tried to control money. At times, I've tried to control my spouse. That did not work out too well, right? I've tried to control things like my health and my future. And the reason that I try to control things is because I have the audacity to believe that if I am in control, then things will turn out much better than if someone else is in control. And yet what Jeremy taught us last week is the truth is none of us are really in control. We like to think that we're in control. We like to grab power and take control. Some of us become control freaks. But the truth of the matter is there is only one who is in control. And life is so much better when you learn to trust that your Heavenly Father really is in control. While Jeremy was teaching last week, I was here on Sunday morning, and it gave me an opportunity to kind of get some eyes on things that I never get to see when I'm teaching people the Bible. And so last weekend on Sunday morning, I went over to hang out in our party room, and then I also went out into our parking lot. And so I just want to say a couple of things about that experience. Number one, if you have not been to our chapel or our overflow space, I want to encourage you to take at least 1 week and go check it out, especially if you live in Harrison County, okay? If you go over into our chapel or our overflow space or what we sometimes call our party room, then you'll go in there and you will get live worship. You will get a live service host. You'll get a live stream message. It is an incredible experience. But even more than that, it gives you a real glimpse into what our Harrison County campus is going to be like later this year when we open that bad boy up. That is, if Jeremy ever finds us a building, right? He talked about it last week. It's one of those things that he can't control, and it's driving him crazy. But I love to take jabs at him. So as soon as he finds us a building, we're going to get that baby ready and hopefully launch that campus in Harrison County around the month of August. And so we're really excited about that. You got to go check that space out. I hung out in there, and it was an awesome experience. The other thing that I did, though, is I walked around in our parking lot. As you know, we have been having to address the issue that we do not have enough parking space to accommodate the people who are coming to Mosaic Church. And so what we've done is we've been asking and pleading in a lot of different ways, man, if you could park over in the office complex or even park over at the upper elementary school. And I just want to say this. Last weekend during our most crowded service, I walked into the front lot, went into the back lot. David drove me around on the golf carts, and I saw open spaces in the back lot and even a few more out in the front lot. And the reason that that excites me is because it lets me know that the people of Mosaic, they understand our mission and how important it is. And so I want to say thank you to all of you who are parking off-site. I want to thank you for understanding the importance of the work that we do here on Sunday morning. I want to thank you for partnering with us in our mission. I want to thank you for being the kinds of people who put someone else's needs even above your own. If we'll continue to make these types of small sacrifices, then we will continue to reach more and more people, which is why Jesus has us here on the coast. With all that being said, I want to jump back into our current series. The title of it is called Power Struggle. As we come to the end of Jesus' life, we see how real the power struggle really was. In fact, the closer we come to the end, the more intense the struggle becomes. I mean, think about it. That's almost every story that you have ever heard, right? The closer we come to the end, the more intense the struggle becomes, right? It's true in any book that you've ever read. The closer you come to the end, the more intense the struggle becomes. It's true in every movie that you've watched. The closer you come to the end, the more intense the struggle becomes. It's even true in sports. In some ways, it reminds me a little bit of March Madness, right? Everybody's kind of watching the tournament right now. By this point in the year, everybody's filled out a bracket. And by this point in the tournament, everybody has a busted bracket, right? Somebody sent me a message this week and said there's one guy out of 20 million brackets that had a perfect bracket at this point in the tournament, which is unbelievable that they picked those teams and all of those games. But when you first start watching the regular season of basketball, nobody even gives a rip about college basketball. I mean, let's just be honest, right? But you go home one Thursday after work and you turn on the TV and you go, oh crap, the tournament's already on, and you get a little bit excited. And that's when there are 64 teams still left in the tournament. It gets even more exciting when we go from 64 to 32. The intensity builds even more when we get into the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. The intensity grows when we get into the Final Four, and the intensity gets even stronger when we finally move into the championship game. Why? It's because the closer you come to the end, the more intense the struggle becomes. And the same was true as you read about the life of Jesus. There were power struggles all throughout his life, but it got more and more and more intense as Jesus came to the end of his life. There was a power struggle between Jesus and the religious leaders of his day. There was an intense power struggle going on between Jesus and Pilate, the great political leader of his day. There was a power struggle going on between Jesus and this man named Caiaphas, the high priest of his day. And while there were power struggles that were going on all around these guys, there was an even greater power struggle that was going on inside of these guys. We saw it in the life of Pilate. Right? Pilate was this guy who was trying to figure out, what am I going to do with this man named Jesus? I mean, this guy that some people say was a miracle working man, this guy who was a good religious man, this guy who is walking around actually claiming that he was the Son of God. And Pilate had to make a decision, and he was torn over the decision that he had to make. Do I use my power to protect Jesus, or do I use my power to kill Jesus? Power struggles going on all around him. But the real power struggle was going on inside of him. The same is true in Judas. Greed was eating Judas alive from the inside out. And Judas had a decision to make. Am I going to give my life to worshiping money, or am I going to give my life to worshiping Jesus? And Jesus said, you cannot worship both God and money. You are going to make a choice, because you will love the one and you will hate the other, or vice versa. Judas, power struggles going on all around him. But the ultimate power struggle was going on inside of him. Same was true if you look at the life of Peter. At the very end, he's following Jesus. He's declared his devotion to Jesus, but he finds himself in a situation where he's terrified, he's afraid. People find out I'm really a follower of Jesus, that they may kill me just like they're going to kill him. And so Peter had a decision to make. Am I going to do the right thing, or am I going to do the convenient thing? Am I going to tell the truth, or am I going to cower in fear and tell a lie? Power struggles going on all around them, but even greater power struggles that were going on inside of them. That's not just true of their life, it's true in your life, it's true in my life, and it's certainly true in the lives of the two men that we're going to be looking at today. A man named Nicodemus and another man by the name of Joseph of Arimathea. Power struggles going on all around them, but the greater power struggle was going on inside of them, because they had a secret. And their secret is about to come out. John chapter 19, verses 38 to 42. Later, Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for the body of Jesus. Now, Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but secretly, because he feared the Jewish leaders. With Pilate's permission, he came and took the body away. He was accompanied by Nicodemus, the man who earlier had visited Jesus at night. Nicodemus brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. Taking Jesus' body, the two of them wrapped it with the spices in strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. The place where Jesus was crucified, there was a garden, and in the garden, a new tomb in which no one had ever been laid. Because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and since the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus are really interesting guys. If you look back in verse 38, we discover that Joseph was actually a disciple of Jesus, which honestly is fairly remarkable because Joseph of Arimathea is also a member of the Sanhedrin. If you don't know what the Sanhedrin is, it was this powerful group of people who ruled over the nation of Israel. In fact, there were only 70 members on the Sanhedrin in the entire nation of Israel. And so in some ways, these 70 people are a lot like the Supreme Court justices who sit on the Supreme Court in the United States. Joseph was that powerful. But this powerful ruler doesn't just see himself as a member of the Sanhedrin. Even more than that, he sees himself as a student of Jesus. He looks at this man named Jesus, and he's been watching him for years. And he knows there's a lot that I can learn from this man named Jesus. There's a lot that I can learn by watching the way he lives his life. There are a lot of things that I can learn from Jesus by watching and listening carefully to the things that he teaches. And if you look again in verse 38, we're told that Joseph was a disciple of Jesus, but he was only a secret disciple of Jesus because he feared the Jewish leaders. In essence, he was afraid of what his colleagues might think if they knew his secret. Nicodemus is not all that different than Joseph of Arimathea. If you go back to John chapter 3, which was like a year ago in our study in the book of John, we see a story where we're first introduced to this guy named Nicodemus, and it's a story about how Nicodemus and Jesus, they have a secret meeting together. It's a meeting that took place in the middle of the night. According to John chapter 3, verse 1, Nicodemus is also a member of the Sanhedrin, or he's also a powerful member of this Jewish ruling council. According to chapter 3, verse 10, Nicodemus is one of the great teachers in all of Israel. He is an expert on Old Testament interpretation. But he comes to Jesus in the middle of the night because he doesn't want any of his friends to know about his relationship with Jesus. He's just like Joseph of Arimathea. He's intrigued by Jesus, but he's afraid of what his colleagues and friends might think of him if they find out that he's really a follower of Jesus. And there's the power struggle. It's a power struggle that's going on inside of them, and it's a power struggle that's going on inside many of us. Yeah, there are power struggles that are going on all around them, but the greater power struggle is taking place right inside of them. And so there's a question, and it's a question that they have to answer, and it's a question that all of us have to answer. Is my faith in Jesus only going to be a private thing, or is my faith in Jesus going to be a public thing? Am I going to spend my life hiding my love for Jesus, or am I willing to let the world know about my love for Jesus? If we're honest, this is not just something that they struggled with. This is something that a lot of people even today struggle with. Why do we hide our faith when Jesus has asked us to be the kinds of people who would share their faith? Why do we do that? Why is it that when something great happens in our lives, we share it with everyone, but when it comes to the very best thing that's ever happened in our lives, we don't tell anyone? I mean, just go home and hop on social media. And what you will see is you'll see that when something great happens in someone's life, that they want to tell everyone in the world about it. I got engaged, man. Look at the rock he put on my finger. Look at the romantic way in which he proposed to me, and it's a great moment in their life. And because it's such a great moment in their life, they want the whole world to know about it. We're having a baby. Look at our ultrasound. We're going to pop the balloon and see what color of confetti comes flying out of that bad boy to see if it's a boy or a girl, right? We get excited about these moments because they're great moments in our lives, and we want everyone to know about those moments. Look at the house we bought. Look at the job I got. Look at the vacation that I went on or the new car that I bought. When something great happens in our lives, we want everyone to know. But when it comes to the best thing that's ever happened in our lives, it's like we don't want anyone to know. In some ways, you look at it and it's like Jesus is the world's best kept secret. And it's becoming even more so the more we move into what I believe is a post-Christian society. It's such a big issue, and this was such an important issue that Jesus said, I got to address it in my teachings. And so Jesus takes a group of his followers up on top of this mountain one day early on in his ministry. Gives the best sermon he ever gave. It was called the Sermon on the Mount. And as he sits down to deliver this message, Jesus is speaking specifically to the people who have given their lives to following after him. Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. This is what Jesus told his followers. He said, you are the salt of the earth. But if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, you need to let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Salt has a purpose. Light has a purpose. And if you are a follower of Jesus, Jesus is saying right here, you have an incredible purpose to serve in your life. If you think about salt in the ancient world, salt was not just used to add a little flavor to something, okay? In the ancient world, the primary purpose of salt was to preserve that which was rotting away. If you are a follower of Jesus, that's one of the greatest purposes that you have in your life, to preserve that which is rotting away in this world. Last weekend, after the service, I was hanging out up front, talking with people, praying with people. Had a guy come up to me, and he said, I need to talk to you about something that's just eating at me. And I said, go for it, man. What's going on? And he said, I've got this friend. We grew up together. He was 6'4", 210 pounds, in his early 40s. But a while back, he got cancer, and he has started to wither away. He's down to 100 pounds, and my buddy told me he's probably going to die any day now. And then he said this. He said, I feel this overwhelming need to tell him about Jesus, but I'm not exactly sure what I should say. You know what my friend is feeling? He's feeling that as a follower of Jesus, I have a great purpose in this world. And the purpose that I have is to preserve that which is rotting away. There may be no hope for him in this life, but there is still hope in Jesus for eternal life. Sure enough, my buddy sent him a message, told him about Jesus. The guy died within 24 hours, and the funeral is today, and my buddy's there trying to tell more people about Jesus. Why? Because he understands that as a follower of Jesus, he has a purpose. Jesus said salt has a purpose. Jesus said light has a purpose. The purpose of light is to help people see what they need to see through this life. The purpose of light is to help people as they try to navigate their way through the darkness. Jesus is saying to his followers, you've got a great purpose, but you will never fulfill your purpose if you're walking around keeping your faith a secret. Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea had a purpose, but they also had a secret. And their secret was keeping them from fulfilling their purpose. Jesus knew their lamp is lit, but they're hiding it under a bowl. They didn't want anyone to know about their love for Jesus or their faith in Jesus. In fact, this struggle for them is really intense, okay? They love Jesus, they admire Jesus, they've got their faith in Jesus, but they don't want anyone to know. And they find themselves in precarious moments where they're being torn over what they're going to do. In Luke chapter 23, verses 50 and 51, we're told that Joseph of Arimathea did not consent to the decision to crucify Jesus. And so apparently the Sanhedrin gets together, get all 70 guys in the room and say, guys, we're going to take a vote. All in favor of killing Jesus, raise your hand. And Joseph of Arimathea did not raise his hand. I don't know if he objected to the decision. I don't know if he abstained from making a decision, but he did not consent to the decision. He would not put his stamp of approval on the decision to crucify Jesus. Nicodemus felt the same struggle going on inside of him. Earlier in the Gospel of John, all the way back in John chapter 7, the religious leaders are already sick of Jesus and they're wanting to arrest Jesus. And Nicodemus steps up and says, I'm going to defend Jesus. And so he says to them, guys, our laws will not allow us to arrest a man until we have questioned the man. And right then and there, the Sanhedrin turned on Nicodemus, and things were probably never the same. These two guys, Joseph and Nick, they will not play a part in arresting Jesus. They will not play a part in the decision to crucify Jesus. But they're also not being honest about their love for Jesus and their faith in Jesus. It was a secret until they stood in the crowd staring at the dead body of Jesus as he hung there lifelessly on a Roman cross. When there was no breath in his lungs, when there's no life left in his body, after Jesus had surrendered his spirit, they finally shared their secret, and the whole world found out about how these two guys really felt about Jesus. Their faith that was once a secret, getting ready to become very public. The things that were once done in darkness, they're now going to be on display in broad daylight. Their faith, their love, and their admiration for Jesus would lead them to bury Jesus. Now, the reason this is so profound is because at this moment in time, these guys had everything to lose And it seemed like they had nothing to gain. I mean, think about why they kept their faith a secret in the first place. We want to hold on to our position in the Sanhedrin. We want to hold on to our power in the nation of Israel. We want to continue to enjoy this life of great privilege. And so if they share their secret now, and they let the Sanhedrin know, we love Jesus, and you guys went out and you killed Jesus, what good is that going to do them? It seems like in this moment, they have everything to lose and they have nothing to gain. Jesus is dead. They have no idea that Jesus is coming back to life in 3 days. The thought of the resurrection would have never crossed their minds. All they know is that Jesus is someone they loved, that this great teacher that they admired, the great miracle worker that they had seen, he's dead and he is hanging on a Roman cross. Why in the world would they share their secret now? I'm going to tell you why they shared their secret now. Because when you stand at the cross, you are ultimately standing at a fork in the road. It's true of them, it's true of every single one of us. When you come face to face with the cross of Jesus Christ, you're going to make a decision. Do you want to be like them? Or do you want to be like him? You look at the Sanhedrin. These are terrible people. They're full of hate to the point they're going to commit murder. They're full of jealousy. They're full of greed. They're full of pride. They're full of all kinds of corruption. And now Nicodemus and Joseph, they're standing there and they both know in this moment we're going to make a decision. Do we really want to be like them? Or do we want to be like him? Do we want to go down this road with these guys and become full of greed and pride and corruption and hate? Or do we want to be like Jesus, who was full of love, who was full of wisdom, who gave his life to serving others, who's a man of incredible respect and godliness? And in that moment, as they stood at the fork in the road, they made their decision. If being on the Sanhedrin means that we got to become like them, I don't even want to be on the Sanhedrin anymore. If being wealthy and enjoying a life of privilege means that I got to act like that, I don't even want that lifestyle anymore. And when it looked like they had everything to lose, when it looked like they had nothing to gain, they showed the whole world that they loved Jesus and they wanted to be like Jesus. And so they go publicly to Pilate. And they say, Pilate, we want his dead body. And I want to remind you that this was done in broad daylight because legally they could not be burying a dead body after the sun set on the day of the Sabbath. And so in broad daylight, they go to Pilate and they say, give us his body. The least this man deserves is a proper burial. And so these two very wealthy, very powerful, white-collar guys with no dirt under their fingernails, with no calluses on their hands, in all their clean clothes and probably even all their religious garb, they go and they take the bloody, beaten body of Jesus. They get their hands dirty as they start the process of preparing him for burial. Now, most of you have never seen a body being prepared for burial. Unfortunately, I have seen a body being prepared for burial. Steph's grandfather, we call him Gam Gam. He used to embalm bodies for a living before he retired. And so he took me to a funeral home with him one night, said, you want to go? I got to drop by the funeral home. Didn't tell me why we were going, just said, yeah, I'll go with you if you need somebody to ride along. And we walked into this room and the door shut and it was pitch black. And he turned on the light And I was shocked because there was a dead body laying right beside me, okay? Like scared me to death, okay? No pun intended on that one, all right? But that night, I watched him prepare this dead man for a funeral. And as I watched him do his thing, I realized the thing that made him so good at this job is that he cares. I watched the way that he dressed the man. I watched the way that he put makeup on this man to put a little life back in his cheeks and a little color back into his hands on his skin. I watched him as he combed this man's hair and fixed this man's tie. And I realized, man, that the reason he's so good at this job is because he cares. The thing that made Joseph and Nicodemus so good at this job is that they cared. They genuinely cared about Jesus. They had everything to lose. Seemed like they had nothing to gain, but they cared so much that they took on the responsibility of preparing his body for burial. They cared about the way Jesus looked. And so they probably washed all of the dried blood off of his face and off of his body. I imagine that when they came to gaping wounds and raw flesh, that they treated him very carefully and very gently. I imagine that when they went to pull his hair back out of his beautiful face, I imagine that they saw thorns that were still stuck in his forehead. Imagine that they had to pull splinters or maybe even chunks of wood out of his back. Got him all cleaned up. And we know that they wrapped him in clean linens. We know that they treated his body with 75 pounds of expensive myrrh and aloes. This was extravagant, to say the least. And then they laid his body in a very expensive tomb, one that no one had ever been laid in before. And again, it was all done in broad daylight. Legally, they had to get it done before the sunset. At this point, Nicodemus and Joseph, they don't care what people think anymore. At this point, Nicodemus and Joseph, they don't even care what it's going to cost them. All they cared about was Jesus. Listen to me. When you come to the end of your life, all you are going to care about is Jesus. And if that's true at the end of your life, then that should probably be true all throughout your life. These guys had no idea that their actions on Friday would matter so much on Sunday. You have no idea how much your love for Jesus today is going to matter tomorrow. You can live the rest of your life keeping your faith a secret, or you can let your light shine before men so that people may see your good deeds, become followers of Jesus, and glorify your Father in heaven. Every week, I stand on this stage and I look at a timer out on the back wall. That timer tells me that my time is running out. If I've got a point that I want to make, I better make it. If I've got something I want to do, I better do it. If I've got something I want to say, I better say it. Same is true in your life. That's not just true in my life. If you're not a follower of Jesus, today needs to be your day. These religious leaders, they watched Jesus for years. They came to that fork in the road and they said, I will give up everything to follow after Jesus. They did not regret it, and I promise you this, you will not regret it. For many of you, this is your fork in the road. Do you want to be like him, or do you want to be like them? You get to choose, and then you live with the choice that you make for all of eternity. For those of you who are followers of Jesus, you need to know there is no reason in this world for you to be ashamed of your love for Jesus or your faith in Jesus. And I'm going to tell you why. Because everybody knows that following Jesus makes life better, and following Jesus makes people better at life. If that's true, then we should be eager not to correct people, but to connect people to Jesus, because we know this is the best thing that could ever happen in their life. Will you pray with me? God, as we bow our heads and as we think about this message, I want to start with those people who walked in today and they're not followers of Jesus. Maybe in some way they feel a little bit like Nicodemus and Joseph, intrigued by Jesus, admire Jesus, but maybe not even yet following Jesus because they're afraid of what other people may think. I pray, God, that right here, right now, they would muster up the faith and the courage, and that you would draw them to yourself in a way where they just say, I'm done with hiding my love for Jesus. If that's you, I want to lead you through this spiritual moment. I want to help you pray a prayer. There's nothing magical about this prayer, but it's just a way that you can express that you're putting your faith in Jesus and you're nailing that decision down right here, right now. Right where you sit, just whisper this prayer to God. Say, God, I'm putting my faith in Jesus. I'm trusting that He died to forgive my sins and that He lived on this earth to lead my life. I'm choosing to follow Him, believing that He can make me right with you and believing that He can make my life better, help me navigate the hardships of life, and just do life the way you always intended for me to do life. If you've prayed that prayer, I want to talk to you about going public with your faith in Jesus. You saw 5 people be baptized this morning in this service. That was their way of saying, I am not hiding my faith. I'm going to go public with my faith. If you've prayed a prayer like that and you've got faith in Jesus, I want to encourage you to go public with that faith by being baptized. This is the safest place in the world where you can do that because people are going to celebrate with you. They're going to clap for you. They're going to encourage you. So take this moment and fill out the Connect card. I want you to let us know that you've chosen to follow Jesus and that you want to be baptized at a service somewhere in the near future here at Mosaic. For those of you who are followers of Jesus, I just want to encourage you. Do not be ashamed of your faith. Let your light shine. Let people see the difference that Jesus has made in your life and the difference that He can make in their life. You have a purpose. And God wants you to live that purpose out. You have no idea how your actions today will ultimately matter tomorrow. God, may we be people who are not afraid, who are not ashamed, but who are very public about our love for Jesus. And may you use us to transform the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I pray it all in Jesus' name. Amen.